Welcome to Sober Talk. I'm Dennis and I have lived experience of alcohol. If you or anyone you know is struggling with alcohol, please call Alcoholics Anonymous on 1300 222222 or check out their website on aa.org.au. I'll just run through the preamble of Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other. They must solve their common problems and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses or opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics achieve sobriety.
All right, well, I'm Stuart. I'm alcoholic and I am sober today, and I'm a member of the Heath discussion group here in Victoria, and I'm 8 years clean and sober. To identify as an alkie, I picked up a drink as a 14-year-old, and to me it was a solution to all the awkwardness and anxieties I grew up with as a kid. I come from a bit of a dysfunctional background. In the family home, there was plenty of alcoholism that was splashed around the household, and lots of verbal violence and even physical violence at times. And growing up as a kid, being pretty frightened at times, frightened of my father, even frightened of my mother, and sort of just shied away. I remember trying to avoid being around that family home as much as I could. I was always looking for an escape, looking for a reason to get out. And then around a 14-year-old, once I picked up a drink, that was my escape. That fixed everything, and fixed the low self-esteem. And I found that I was able to fit in with my peers. At the time, I could be just as clever and just as funny as anyone else. So I was a square peg in the round hole until I picked up that drink, and then I was right. So it was off and going. And I remember my father saying when I was in early recovery, he goes, "Stuart, you got to about 15-year-old and we couldn't reach you anymore." So I do believe that was about the time I had the personality change. And to me, drinking and drugging, eventually drugging, was the answer. I loved the party, I loved the effect. And I earned a reputation as a party animal pretty quick, and I loved that. I lived up to that. So to me, my drinking was all about having a good time. And the problem with that is that all I wanted to do was have a good time, and I couldn't be responsible in any other area of my life. It was about, the obsession kicked in, and I was always looking for that next drink. By the time I was 17-year-old, I was using drugs, and probably 18-year-old, I had a raging drug habit as well as a big drinking culture, and that led to all sorts of problems. But not that I knew it at the time. At the time, it just seemed that everyone else had the problem with my partying, as I used to call it, and I'd be in strife in the workplace. I'd have so many jobs. I'd just go from one job to the next because I'd always burn me bridges and destroy opportunity for going anywhere in a job place. I might get in strife for not turning up when I said I would, and not being responsible, not being reliable. But none of that mattered to me. I'd go down to the bar and I'd end up with a job the next day somewhere else. And that's all I did. I just hopped and skipped from job to job. And it's a very similar situation with relationships too. I get into relationships with a girl, and as soon as she tried to change my drinking or get me to tone down a bit, she would have to go, So I wasn't going to be held back. To me, it was about getting out there and having as much fun as I could. And I honestly believed that I was having fun, even though I was getting into strife now and again. But when that happened, I just shrug my shoulders and think, oh, well, I was drunk and I'll be more careful next time. So nothing for me was ever a problem in my drinking, in my 20s, I should say. And I remember a lot of my peers, they'd couple up, they'd pair up and get married, or to start businesses or buy homes. They'd be getting their act together, and I could never see the point of that. I thought I'd much rather be the freelance type and just come and go as I please, when I want and how I want. And sort of with that, I sort of roamed the countryside. I just rode all over Australia in places, and just as long as I was having a good time, nothing else mattered, And my drinking wasn't really a problem for me until like later in life. I got into my 30s and had a family, had a couple of kids and whatever, and trying to be a responsible father, which I wanted to be. I wanted desperately to be, but I just couldn't put down the drink. I put down harder drugs that I was using. That wasn't really an issue. I managed to sort of, after a few relapses, I sort of got my act together within a year as far as the harder drugs were concerned. And I thought, if I just have a few drinks and smoke a bit of weed, possibly that'd be okay. I'd be managed as a family man, and but that wasn't to be the case. My drinking would become a priority over my family man. I couldn't be there for emotionally for the kids, and I couldn't be a loving partner. I never really understood what love was. So I was just the man of the house, and if I can make ends meet and sort of provide to them and put some money on the table on a Thursday night, that was my job done, and I should be able to drink when and where I wanted and how I wanted, and nobody was going to tell me otherwise. But that became major issues. I seemed to have the whole world conspiring against me at the time. I had my parents on my case. I had my wife on my case. I had my in-laws on my case. I had bosses on my case. It seemed like everyone had an issue with me drinking. And people would make comments, you're a good bloke, but you're an arsehole when you piss, Stuart, and it's about time you started growing up and things like that. And I'd just get so defensive and I'd take offence to that and attack. But that was my thing. People would try to talk sense to me, and they'd be well-meaning, and they'd try to point me in the right direction. But I could never see that. I could never see that the drinking was a problem. Eventually, lots of things were happening. The household became violent, the same as the household that I grew up in, but only tenfold. I was doing a lot more stuff. I was behaving in a lot worse ways than what I ever saw my parents behave, and that meant lockups. I mean, there'd be carloads of police coming around, and they'd be separating me. They'd be taking me off to the lockup, or they'd be taking her to a mother's place, and it just become out of control. And this was ongoing, And I try to behave, I'd say, look, I'd be waking up in the morning full of that guilt, shame, and remorse, and I'd be swearing off in the morning, and then by lunchtime I'm thinking, well, that decision was a bit drastic. Maybe I can just behave myself tonight, and I'd be off to the bar after work, and same old. Once I got that first couple of drinks in and had the taste, there was no turning back for me, and that just happened year after year, and to the point where I just couldn't handle it anymore. I was so sick and tired of being sick and tired in the mornings. I'd be feeling like lower than a snake's belly in the mornings, and be an absolute legend and have my rights as a working man, and nobody's going to tell me otherwise. I do what I want. Nobody can tell me what to do. And I just, and it'd be just a cycle that went on and on and on for years, and to the point where the vibe in the house was so negative, and so nobody knew what to expect, or they could expect drama, I suppose. There was always trouble. And I've got two little kids growing up in this environment, two little kids seeing stuff that two little kids should never be subjected to, and a caring, loving partner that was subject to verbal violence and physical violence in the end. And I couldn't live with myself any longer. I thought this family would be better off if I was not here. And to me, I needed to do myself in. I was going to suicide. I thought that was the only logical answer, and I was convinced that it was the only logical answer for that family, because I just didn't know what to do. I just couldn't manage, and I was sort of trying, not really admitting defeat, but knew that I was defeated, I suppose. So denial was thick there, but I just didn't know how to cope anymore. And I tried to take my life. I was at work one day, and I took a knife from my toolkit and went into the toilets with the intentions of slashing my wrists. And and trying to pluck the courage up to go through with that, I had this epiphany or this vision of these two little kids growing up without their father, and I just couldn't do it to them. I thought that's probably the first time that I ever thought of anyone else other than myself, I think. But so I went home and I made a phone call, I think, to Lifeline or something of the sorts anyway, and I don't know who I spoke to, but they did put me in touch with a drug and alcohol counsellor in Epping Hospital, or Northern Hospital in Melbourne, and I think I had about 6 sessions with that guy, and he said to me, I can't help you anymore, why don't you go and have a look at AA? And I remember driving to a meeting that he suggested, and parked the car at a distance across the road and saw a bunch of happy people at the doorway, and 8 o'clock come and they walked inside this hall, and I got out of there as quick as I could. I could not for the life of me imagine not drinking. How was I ever going to have fun again? How was I ever going to relax again? What was I going to do into my kids' 21st or their marriages or whatever, I just couldn't see it. And it actually frightened the daylights out of me, the thought of just not drinking. So I saw that drug and alcohol counsellor again, and I said, stopping drinking is not the answer. That's not my problem, what else can we do? And he said, Stuart, you don't have to stop drinking. Just go and have a listen to what the people have got to say. And he said to me, if it's any consolation to you, I'll meet you in the hall next week and I'll go there for a bit of support. And I thought, well, if he's going to go to that much trouble, I could at least meet him halfway, and I'd go into the meeting, and I agreed to that. And I went back to that meeting the following week and went inside the hall expecting to find him there, but of course he wasn't. But the right people for me were that day. People were sharing from the floor all the stuff that was going through my mind constantly, and stuff that I was afraid to talk about to anyone. If I had to mention what was going through my head to doctors, I was afraid that I'd be locked up. Or if I had to share it with friends, or the friends that I had left anyway, I'd be punched up. And I knew from that very first meeting that I was going to find the answers that I needed to find for whatever it was that I was looking for, but I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure that I wanted to stop drinking at that time. In fact, I didn't want to stop. I just wanted the dust to settle on the home front. And people, they shook me hand and they asked me, if I can get to a meeting the following night, and they sort of arranged lifts for me, and they said if you can get there, we can always get you home, and that's what happened. Well, I've been coming ever since, and that turns out that every time there's a lesson to be learnt or something new, the teachers always appear for me, and the first off, initially I didn't get sober right away in AA. I come along to the meetings for about 3 years before I actually sobered up. I did a length of time up. First off, I think I had about 3 months up, and Christmas period come around, and I was at a workplace party and everyone's drinking, and I'm obsessed with what they're drinking, how much they're drinking, and sitting on my pity pot thinking, why me? Why am I an alcoholic? How come I can't enjoy a drink? And driving home from that workplace party, I ended up pulling into a bottle shop, and I thought I'll just get half a dozen beers and that'll do me. And I went home and I sat on the back veranda and cracked the first one, and the heavens didn't fall in or anything like that. I wasn't struck by lightning, and thought I'd be okay until the family walked around from the side gate. They'd been Christmas shopping or something, and just the look on their faces, they were just absolutely shattered that I picked up again. They thought that I was going well, and so what happened, I just blew the trust right out the window, and eventually, long story short, I had to get out of that family home. I had to leave them alone and go and get me act together elsewhere, and that was probably the hardest thing I ever did, because I still, at that point, didn't know how to stop drinking, even though I'd be coming to meetings and what have you, and I'd hear stuff like, if you're an alcoholic, you continue to drink, it gets worse. Well, that's what actually happened. So what the people in the rooms couldn't teach me, the booze eventually did. And after a while, I just succumbed. I thought, I'm hopeless, and had that I was in such a dark place. I just wanted to die. And knew that the only way I was going to die was to kill myself properly this time. I burnt my bridges with everybody I did, because once I'd left that family home, all I could do was couch surf with buddies that I was using and drinking with at the time, and eventually I even wore them out. So there was no one left in my life. My family had wiped me, my extended family had wiped me, my friends wiped me, so there was nowhere to go. And I thought I might as well just be dead now, and was planning to go through with that. And being at the crossroads, I don't ever remember making a conscious decision, but I think it was a God, of my understanding, that I didn't understand at the time, probably didn't even believe in at the time, but I do believe today that the decision was made for me, and I ended up in an AA meeting, and I was asked to share first cab off the rank. And I got up and, I said, look, Stuart's grand plan ain't working. I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know where to go from here. And I sat down again and listened for the rest of the meeting. After the meeting, the guy that used to pick me up from rehabs and drive me around, he bailed me up as I was trying to get out after the Serenity Prayer, and he said to me, Stuart, if you want what we got, you got to start doing what we do. And I just agreed. Even though probably every fibre in me was saying, I'll do this my way, because, I figured that if I couldn't sort my own problems out, I wasn't a man. And that's the stuff that kept me sick for the 3 years of my AA drinking. So automatically another guy job, I guess I surrendered to him. I said, I'll do whatever you want me to do. And he said, well, for starters, you can start using the phone and give me a call every day to touch base, and then maybe we'll look at the program that's hanging on the wall over there. And so I think I did that. I sort of balked at first. I thought, what are we going to ring about if I'm talking to you every day on the phone? And believe me, I must have drove that poor fella mad in that first year, because I was on the phone every day. Everything that I'm trying to deal with sober was catastrophic. I'd make mountains out of molehills, and I honestly didn't know how to cope with life on life's terms. I had to grow up, so I'd be on the blower team constantly, saying, oh, what about this and what about that? And he'd always shine a light on the situation for me, and he'd probably show me my part in the situation as well, when those moments of anger and resentment. And we talk about stuff, we share about stuff, and I'd come through each issue, I'd come through the other side that little bit stronger and a little bit wiser. And his other suggestion was for me to we were going to attend a steps meeting, and this particular meeting covered one step per month sort of thing. And I remember hated going to that meeting, because I just didn't identify. I didn't know what the people were talking about. I didn't really understand my own powerlessness and things like that. But I mean, at the end of the 12 months, I started to feel a little bit better, and I started to understand what these people were talking about. They talked about recovery, and some of it made sense to me. So it's been a journey for me. It's been an ongoing journey. It's it's the most important thing that I've learnt is sort of just to stay touched, never stray from the program. Just keep doing meetings, and that's what's happened for me. I do meetings. Initially I probably wasn't working the sticks that hard, but I was doing meetings, and they said to me, if you don't get AA will get you. And in my case, that's exactly what happened. It took me a while, to sort of do regular inventory and start being accountable for my own actions, and stop being so resentful. But in saying that, I think a lot of that, when I come into the rooms, I was so angry and so wound up. I was wound up like a spring, full of just riddled with anxiety. And a lot of that was removed in that first year by talking to the sponsors. So I guess from day dot in AA, my life did start to get better. I think in my worst days sober was still better than my best days drunk, because my best days of that period were just trying to get by, and me worst days in AA, they were better than me drinking days, because I'd get through a day. I might have just a day when the only good thing that happened was that I didn't pick up a drink, but I got through it. So they were better days, and how vastly different that is today. I've been around the rooms quite a while now. That first meeting was in September '99, and I've sort of had all the ups and downs, and probably made all the mistakes in the rooms, and bolted all the suggested things and done all the suggested things, and but what a journey it's been. But I can tell you that my life today is vastly different. They say that you don't come to the rooms and you get a new life, or you get your old life polished up, you get a brand new life, and that's I can testify to that. I could not have planned my life the way that it's turned out in AA. Once I sort of made that decision to turn my will and my life over to this God that I didn't really understand, things just got better and better. I've learned to be accountable for actions, to amend situations when need be, and all my relationships started to improve, and I felt that bit by bit, everyone's sort of coming back into my life. I was able to hold down jobs even, and be reliable at jobs, and then have people, relying on me and coming up me and asking me to sort of manage workshops and what have you. And that would never happen left to my own devices. But staying sober and hanging around the rooms and being true to the fellowship and being loyal, things did improve, and so it's sort of gone even beyond that today. Around the 16-year mark, I did get a bit complacent. I had everything going for me. I owned my own house. I had investment properties, and I had the highlight job of my career at the time, and got complacent in the rooms and not complacent with the program, and paid a price for that. I didn't actually pick up a drink, but I did pick up a drug. And that was devastating for me. It was just an emotional meltdown. I got too complacent with the program. I was running around to meetings only to see who was there. I wasn't sort of helping out any newcomers, or I wasn't doing any service work, and paid a price for that. Admittedly, it was a short lapse, but it was a lapse, needless to say. It was a lapse as a lapse. And so I was back to square one for me. And fortunately for me, I was at a particular meeting in Bendigo here, and there was a beginners meeting, and a fella just got out of prison. And he come to me, he knew me from years earlier, and he said to me, Stuart, I need you to take me through the big book. I'm scared I'm going to drink. And I said to him, no, mate, I can't help you. I'm not in a good space at the moment, and told him the story that I picked up and whatever, and he just wouldn't take no for an answer. And we spoke for hours after this particular meeting at the front, and eventually I said, look, mate, just give me a couple of days to get my act together and come around, and we'll go through the book. And me helping him out was my saving grace as much as his. Things worked out for him. He couldn't thank me enough for going through the steps with him and showing him the ropes. But I said, don't worry about thanking me, mate. It's me that should be thanking you. He pulled me out of such a rut that I was in. I think without him turning up, I would have been left for dead. I don't doubt that for a minute. And so, yeah, anyway, I got back on track, and that was 8 years ago now. But, life goes on, and I've always vowed that, I'll stick close to the program and be very mindful of complacency. And even last year I felt myself starting to slide a bit, getting a bit complacent, and I'm fortunate enough to belong to a home group where we have several newcomers between 0 and 5 years, and all of them are travelling really well, and they're all doing great, because the only thing that they're doing that I wasn't doing is they all have a service position. And I thought, that's what I need to do. I need to get back to basics, and I'm going to be in stripe again. I could just feel it brewing. I always say that when I'm surrounded by arseholes, it's not the people around me that are the problem, it's me that's the problem. I know that today, and I knew exactly what I had to do, and so I found a service position that I'm comfortable with, and I do it. There was a fellow from another meeting that invited me to get on board with the prison roster, and I've been doing that for the last 8 or 9 months now, and that's been magnificent. That's sort of, I love going in there. I love hearing the guys sharing from prison and talking about their stuff, and I'm able to help out with the program and sort of pass on what I've been taught to them, and they're so appreciative, and I'm appreciative, and it's just the dividends are incredible. And for that little bit of service that I do, I also talk in rehabs today when I can. So it just puts me on such a high that I just love, the peace of mind that goes with it, and everything sort of balance all my relationships with everybody that I know. Basically, it's smooth sailing, and it's all friendly, it's all above board, it's all healthy. I couldn't get that left to my own devices, So I know that service and God and all that are doing for me what I could not do for myself.
Good on you, Stuart.
It's just a magnificent way of life, I travel the country and meet new people and hear new speakers, new stories, and just get more and more from it. I think it's the older members used to say early days, AA, they've been around for, one fellow was around nearly 60 years sober, and he just said to me, it keeps getting better. And I know exactly what he means today. Every day is an absolute joy to be around. I don't say that lightly, I'm not saying that because that's what you say in an AA meeting, or it's actual fact. I just feel blessed some days to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous and have the program that's saved my life. So thank you, and thank you for asking me to share, and it's been an honour.
Thanks very much, Stuart. Great share, mate. Thank you. We have local meetings for the full week in the local area. Monday is Gala meeting at 8 o'clock. Tuesday is Elizabeth East at 8 o'clock. Wednesday is Elizabeth East at 8 o'clock. Thursday is Two Wells at 8 o'clock. And Friday is Salisbury at 8 o'clock. There's a meeting at Daveron Park at 12 o'clock, and on Sunday there's a meeting in Salisbury at 7 o'clock, and many other meetings in the area. For details of your local meetings, please phone 1300 22 2222. And once again, if anyone you know is struggling with alcohol issues, please call Alcoholics Anonymous on 1300 22 2222. The website is aaSouthAustralia.org.au.